I'm Stephanie from WorkSafe Tasmania, your host. Please in recognition of the deep history and culture of this island, we acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the original and continuing custodians of the land, sea and sky. We acknowledge and pay our respects to all Tasmanian Aboriginal people, all of whom have survived invasion, dispossession, and continue to maintain their identity, culture, and Aboriginal rights. Please take a moment now to read the following slide about information received today. Please use the chat tab to type and submit any questions for today's presenters. Webcams will only be used by presenters as well, and today's webinar is also being recorded. It is now my pleasure to introduce your presenters today from Altius Group, Matthew Counsel and Mitch Ferrie. Matthew is an expert in health and wellbeing with a degree in exercise science and 15 years of experience in workers' compensation. He improves worker health by identifying risks at workplaces. Matthew is also a skilled presenter at Australian industry events, discussing topics like workplace safety, mental health and return to work, and his talks are always well received. Mitch is a health and safety consultant passionate about worker wellness and accident prevention. He has a background in exercise science and a graduate certificate in occupational health and safety. Mitch works with various industries to develop safety systems, conduct risk assessments, and implement wellness programs. He's skilled in compliance, incident investigation, and data analysis. Mitch is an experienced trainer who delivers engaging sessions on workplace health and safety, and we welcome our presenters today.
Thank you, Stephanie. And welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll kick off. We all know Chernobyl as one of the worst disasters in the history of nuclear power generation. In the context of work health safety, it's actually one of the worst workplace disasters in history. Up to 50 people died during the initial event, and it's estimated another 4,000 to 5,000 people may have lost their lives in the years since. The impact of this event has been nothing but catastrophic in terms of human life. Investigations have shown that Chernobyl was a result of flawed design, inadequately trained personnel, and ultimately, at its core, a poor safety culture. With today's presentation, so I just lost my mouse. With today's presentation, Mitch is going to talk us through an understanding of safety culture and what it means. He'll give insights as to how to assess your safety culture. He's going to provide practical tools and steps to help build your safety culture, and we'll be referencing case studies like Chernobyl throughout the presentation. But firstly, a little bit about Altius Group for those that haven't met or crossed paths with us previously. We're Australia's leading allied health professionals, and we support our clients in the areas of workplace health and risk. We are national. We have over 850 team members, 95 locations, and currently in Tasmania, we have offices in both Hobart and Launceston. How we deliver our services to our clients is through a range of specialist brands. Speaking to the audience today, understanding that you're all employers involved in health and safety, HR, business leaders, the areas where we can support you is in the management of workers' comp claims as an occupational rehab provider under our brand Rehabilitation Services by Altius. In the mental health space, we are an EAP or employee assistance provider, again with psychologists based down in Tasmania as well. And we can be your preferred EAP provider. In the work health safety space, we have safety consultants and can assist you with gap analysis. We can assist you with psychosocial risk assessments, and of course, supporting your organisation in areas such as safety culture, like we'll talk about today. Handing over to you, Mitch, to get the presentation underway.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you, Stephanie, for the lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for your time today. I want to start with some context around how safety has evolved and where we've come from. What we can witness in hindsight is a transition and recognition that people within an organisation were the missing components in the safety management process. The technical age saw a focus on plant, engineering, equipment, and compliance, before the human factor age introduced systems integrating health with safety and adding certifications, verifications of competency, and risk assessments to the mix. The safety culture age has looked to engage the individual by involving them within the process. Behaviour, leadership, accountability, and recognition that safety doesn't have to be instead of profit is now recognised. As we've moved through the eras, we've also seen a reduction in incidents. The evolution of safety. So where did the term safety culture come from? And Matt's referenced it already, but it first began gaining attention when appearing in investigation reports into human instigated catastrophes. I'm sure we're all familiar with the most famous man-made catastrophe in the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown. But for those unfamiliar with the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, firstly, take my strongest recommendation to have a watch. It's very entertaining, but it's also extremely educational about how safety culture can affect what's happening in a workplace. Secondly, it provided a case study into one of the most famous questions to come from that investigation, which is, who is at fault? Those who hang a rifle on a wall, aware that it is loaded, or those who inadvertently pull the trigger? Bad safety culture is an environment where, to that example, gun safety is neglected, where guns are played with, and where the consequences of pulling the trigger of a gun are disregarded. The reports of these investigations basically said that many factors were in play, but organisational attitudes and culture contributed to the disaster. Community standards are being looked at as a contributing factor towards accidents within an organisation. Is safety a priority in an organisation? Now, I don't think there's a perfect answer to what is safety culture. It includes so many factors: leadership commitment, employee involvement, effective communication, continuous improvement, a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating risks. Some definitions treat safety culture as an entity that an organisation either has or does not have. Such a view has been questioned. Can safety culture be separated from the broader operating culture of an organisation? Another view looks at safety culture as the outcome of broader organisational culture. Hopefully we can unpack it a little today. The role of safety culture. Whether we can define it perfectly or not, we do know that safety culture infiltrates each person and team within the organisation, and it will have an effect on outcomes, both our lag and our lead indicators. An increase in identified hazards or a reduction in incidents, for example, with an organisation whose safety culture is progressing. Safety culture effectively plays a large role in keeping people safe at work. Improving coincides with the effectiveness of a safety management system, prioritisation of safety, commitment to safety and the process, competence of those involved, and a focus on continual improvement. When we concentrate on those things, we can progress. We have three guiding layers that make up an organisation's safety culture. We've got the inherent underlying subconscious beliefs and values that individual members of the organisation have developed over the course of their lives. They're feelings that haven't really been considered. We've got things that have had the surface scratched off them, the attitudes and beliefs that people think strongly about and can describe why, the sort of things we discuss when sitting around a table with friends and family. And we've got the result of those two above layers. How do the above manifest themselves? Do we end up with robust safety management systems because people in the organisation feel strongly about safety? Or do we neglect safety? Is reporting frequent? Is it encouraged? For example, a basic assumption, there's a feeling that written rules and procedures are considered futile in the organisation. When someone's asked, does their organisation do safely well? They say no, but they can't explain why. The espoused beliefs and values, these are individual beliefs around certain safety rules and procedures that aren't important. Why don't you wear your PPE? Because it doesn't make a difference. And then we've got the artifacts, the safety rules and procedures that haven't been effectively implemented by people in the organisation. So we've got a rule or a process in place, but we don't follow it. We're meant to put up cones and chains before using our forklifts, but we don't do it. Just before I touch on the safety culture and the safety climate, if anyone does have any questions that pop up throughout these slides, feel free to put it in the chat and we can answer it as we go, as well as some time at the end. When it comes to the safety culture versus safety climate, the safety climate provides an indication of the safety culture under the surface of our organisation and why an iceberg is an apt comparison. It's a snapshot of a moment in time and what our assessment tools look to measure. We expect there to be links between safety-related behaviours and performance indicators leading to the safety climate. And I think we've got a poll that we want to kick off before we jump into the detail around this slide, but we're keen to get an idea of where everyone sits at the moment with where they think they're at along the safety maturity scale. So just while you're having a think about that, I'll give you a bit of an explanation about what we're looking at here. So at the first level, the pathological level, we've got denial, where operational targets prevail. Whatever's cheaper, whatever's faster, all that's really important is not being caught by the regulator. There may be boxes ticked, but that's as far as it goes. Typically, the view is that if people have accidents, it's probably their fault. The employer tries to attribute blame, assuming accidents are caused by a small number of careless workers. At the reactive level, safety is starting to be given attention, but it happens after an event. There's concern about adverse publicity becoming prominent, and we're beginning to establish an incident reporting system. We've got increasing levels of skill in management and understanding how to be safe in hazardous operations, and we act strongly when things go wrong. What they find, they try to fix, but they're driven by events rather than trying to get ahead of the game. At the calculative level, there are systems to manage safety, though often in response to external pressures. We begin to have data harvested and information collected and stored. Calculative organisations try to get ahead of the game. They're putting in processes, they're putting in systems to make sure things don't go wrong. And a safety management system is considered a key pillar within the organisation. Culturally, people are beginning to believe that the system will keep them safe and they can trust their organisation. The proactive level looks at organisations that are aware that there are hazards at their work. They seek to eliminate them before they lead to an accident. Develop effective processes for identifying and dealing with safety issues. Proactive organisations realise that they will keep finding new problems and new hazards. They start to challenge long-held beliefs that they have hung on to because that's the way they've always done it. And workers at every level are starting to think about things that haven't happened, with management encouraging them to do that. Finally, we reach the generative level, level 5, where safety is respected, organisations anticipate and respond to risks. It's a fair organisation, an organisation that learns and is flexible and adapts when things are going wrong. People are supported, not restricted by the processes and procedures in place, And rather than management telling the workforce what to do, the workforce also participates. People who are faced with hazards are involved. The people on the ground are the ones that are consulted when it comes to safety within a generative workplace. And management designs a system that enables this process. So I see we've had some responses come through there. Matt, do you want to unpack those?
Yeah, definitely. So about half the audience have responded to being, level 4 and level 5, which is excellent. It's a proactive and a generative system. Probably indicative of the audience here that we have today, the fact that you guys are giving up your time to listen into conversations about safety culture shows that you already have a vested interest in this space. Then we have about a quarter of the response, being quite honest, saying they're either reactive or calculative as well. Mitch, what's your experience for an SME, a small business? There's a lot for them to be focusing on, not only in their own operations in their safety space. Where should an SME business be really aiming to have their safety culture?
I think everyone wants to get to the generative level, but there's an understanding that it's a process, that it takes time and that we develop. Safety doesn't need to be locked in place. Even massive companies' safety management systems constantly evolve. So if we're starting out, if we're smaller, it's just about improving. It's about trying to prioritize the highest risk hazards in your organization and then working through that system. It's about creating a process where in the infancy of your organization, safety is part of the business model, where it's considered at every level, and keeping people safe, their own workers, the people that are involved with others, customers, everyone's part of that process. Does that answer your question, Matt?
It does. And quite often, Mitch, when I'm in front of clients and speaking with clients, I quite often hear that safety is paramount. It is part of our values. I'm sure you're going to take us through, some of the practical tools on, ways organisations can really start to embed safety culture.
Yep. Let's move on. So why measure our safety climate? And safety climate gives us a snapshot of our safety culture, because we can't fix it if we don't know where we're at, and we can't keep it a good culture if we don't know why we've got it. We need to treat safety culture like everything else in our organization, feeding it through framework. First step is identifying where we're at. What level of maturity are we up to? So what we've just done there, run a poll, that's beginning to identify and think about where we're up to along this process. After we can identify where we're up to from an organizational point with our safety culture, we can assess it. Is our culture an issue? Are we happy with it? Can it be improved? And this identification, assessment, management and review process, I hope we're all familiar with. It's the risk management framework, and something we want to be working through with hazards in our organization. We treat safety culture the same. After we've assessed it and worked out whether we've got an issue, we start implementing controls. We use tools that we're going to touch on today to assist the process. We manage our safety culture. If it needs to be improved or maintained, we've got things in place that actively improve it. And then we review. Do we review yearly? Do we review quarterly? Do we review at every health and safety committee meeting? That depends. How big is our issue? What's our turnover been like? There are things we can put in place to reflect how often we should review, but at a minimum, it's important to have a look at something like this at minimum once a year. During that process, that identification, assessment, management, and review, we want to consult our staff at every stage. And there are various tools and methods available. We want to include things like surveys, interviews, assessments, observations, audits, assessments that help us pinpoint our strengths and the areas needing improvement. We want to get insights into how safety is perceived and practiced at each level of our organisation. The surveys and the questionnaires, they can gather anonymous feedback from employees about their perceptions of safety, and our audits and our observations, they can assess the workplace practices and behaviours firsthand. What this then does is guide our efforts to enhance safety performance.
Mitch, I've got a couple of questions that have come through just before we move on.
Yep.
A couple of organisations in a different stage as well. So one of the organisations, says they've got a lot in place, and you mentioned the different layers of the organisation. They believe there's a lot in place, but feel it's not really cascading down from the senior, from the top. What advice would you have for someone in a company like that feels that the safety culture, all the good intention is not getting down to the grassroots?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's not uncommon in where we have every procedure and policy in place, but it hasn't flowed down. And what we can do in that instance is review. I think we've gone through that identification, assessment, control phase, and we're at the review point. So what we want to do is run through that system again. We've reviewed where our safety culture is, and it sounds like we're not happy with it. We've put in the controls around policies and procedures, and now we've identified that it's not where we want to be, so we're looking for some new controls. When it comes to touching on specifically about how they flow down, it's important that, and what I want to consider in that organisation, what was our consultation process like during the development of those procedures and policies? Were workers at that grassroots level where it hasn't fed down to involved throughout the process? Are there fingerprints on the policies and procedures? Because if the policies and procedures aren't developed with the people that are going to use them, they often don't flow down. And if we've got leadership that develop them at their level, but again, aren't talking, aren't observing those people that are in the day-to-day on the ground when it comes to those particular specifics, then there becomes a disconnect. Hopefully we can touch on, when we get into our practical tools, some more things there, but when this common situation happens, I really want to find out at a first step, has everyone been involved in the process of developing our procedures?
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. And a second one that's come through, an organisation that perhaps is at the early stages of their process. We've got a team member that is not directly overseeing or involved with safety, but they definitely want to have a positive impact as well. So what are some simple steps at an individual level, or are there checklists? Like, how does someone kickstart even the conversation in their organisation?
Yeah, I think that's, you've touched on that. But an interest and wanting to be involved begins by asking questions. Do we have something in place there? It's observations. Is there an ability for us to recognize and provide improvement? Do we have at that level in a smaller business? Is there a way for us to report hazards? Is there a way for us to suggest? Is there a way we can develop relationships within our team, within our organization, that enable those discussions? And if at the moment we don't have a lot of control, we can be an example. We can be someone that when those things come up around safety, we're positive, we're positively involved. And I think it's the same way we build culture at any level, our family culture, our friend culture, our hobbies, and our sporting endeavors. We build culture by being involved in the process, being a part of the community, being a good example, and asking all the right questions. Does that clear that up, Matt?
It does. Yeah, thanks, Mitch. And I think the next phase to this presentation, you're about to talk about how to assess safety culture. So for this individual, as well. The opportunity to formally assess your safety culture gives a bit of grounding to go back to your safety committee or your seniors and say, look, this is a benchmark, this is where we are, and where do we want to be as an organisation? So going back to that levelled framework as well. Mitch, you talked about consultation. One final question that's come through. When feeding information back to a work health safety committee, what's your guidance on when an organisation should have a committee? Is there a minimum number of employees at an organisation that should form a committee? What's the scope or the rules around that?
So some of these things are state to state. There are guidelines around when you need to, as an employer, decide to have a committee. There's no harm in having committee or representatives. It's a way to consult your staff. It's a way to empower people to be involved in the process, to build ownership within your teams, and having people that want to be involved in that process is only of benefit. I think another important thing is transparency. So we do want people to get involved in that, and we want to share the information we have. Does that clear that up?
Excellent. So it doesn't sound like it's a hard and fast rule that you need 100 employees. It's a form of consultation and whether it's a good fit for your organisation.
Yep.
Excellent. Mitch, I'll let you carry on. We've got a couple more questions coming through, but I'll let you push on to the next slide and we'll get to those questions. So please keep them coming through. We're happy to keep answering them.
Thanks, Matt. So I want to start talking about what makes a strong safety culture. But firstly, I want to talk about how we assess it. How do we build a good culture? What controls are we using that reflect our safety maturity? Implementing clear and comprehensive safety policies and procedures is fundamental. Policies should be tailored to your workplace and your operations. They should be regularly reviewed and they should be communicated effectively to every level of employee. We can do that via training once a year where we rehash. It's important that that is involved in the induction process where people are given the information and then they can be observed and we can verify that they understand that information and then they can interact with our safety management system. We want to follow the idea that views people as the solution and not the problem, understanding that the individual worker is often the expert on their particular role or task and therefore have the best idea around how to do it safely. And obviously a level of experience comes into that, but well-trained and experienced workers often have the best idea around how to do their particular task safety. So I want to talk to them. I want to ask them how they could improve this process. Implementing safety committees allows people to share expertise, and it's something that we can track as a lead indicator. They allow for the process to be refined and they share ownership of safety. The effective communication piece is critical. It's not about just sending information, creating flyers, sending emails. It's about ensuring that they're understood and acted upon. Consider regular safety meetings, toolbox talks, digital platforms, visual aids like signage to reinforce safety messages throughout your organisation. We want to follow the evidence to implement the best bang for our buck interventions we can muster. We want to grab the low-hanging fruit off the tree of safety, ensuring our staff are trained and educated, both internally and externally. And we want to measure and record that, both the time and the amount of sessions we're having there. The ongoing training and education are essential components for a strong safety culture. Training should be targeted, relevant, and engaging. We want to cover topics such as hazard recognition, emergency procedures, safe work practices. Investing in your employees' knowledge and skills leads to you empowering them to contribute to a safer workplace. We want to ensure that staff are that staff are adequately resourced and that manpower and equipment is there. So when it comes to assessing the safety culture, we want to gather information. How do we work out where we're up to? We want to utilize lead indicators. Are we having hazards get reported? Are they being categorized appropriately? How long between a hazard being reported does a corrective action take? How many meetings have we had with safety on the agenda? How many training sessions have been conducted? How many hazards have we added controls to? Where was that hazard on the hierarchy? Task observations. How many risk assessments have we done? How many inspections? How many audits? How many site walkarounds? There is so much information we can gather and track when it comes to lead indicators. From the lag indicators, the historic things that we've traditionally looked at to track safety, incidents, near misses, turnover, cost of claims, accidents, lost time injuries. We want to include them in the process. They're information that we can track trends with. Surveys and staff interaction allow us to check in with the same people regularly, that longitudinal study. They measure change. We want to ask things like, my company places a strong emphasis on workers' safety. Yes, no. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. My workers' safety is given a high priority by leadership. I feel that my company openly accepts ideas for improving safety. I feel that my company encourages open communication and safety. If you've just walked into an organization or you've been in an organization for 3 years and want to assess your safety culture, these are the things we want to consider. Start by identifying where we're up to. Have the chats with staff, have the interviews, run the survey, have a look at your leading indicators and your lagging indicators. We're probably tracking our lagging indicators, but let's add the leads as well. These systems don't have to be complicated. They can be an Excel spreadsheet. How many team meetings, how many toolboxes have we had this month where safety was on the agenda? That is a way we can track and a way we can gauge how often safety is being brought up in our company. And it's a way to, through looking at the whole piece of the puzzle, have a look at where our safety culture's at.
Great tips. Thanks, Mitch. A question has just come through around a lag indicator. So despite best efforts in trying to forecast and plan for events, some incidents do occur. Now, if you're in an organisation and an incident has occurred that it's the first time this has ever happened and you hadn't planned for it, there is no related policy controls in place. How do you respond as a safety team to this new hazard or new incident?
Yep. So incidents happen, hazards exist. When it comes to, firstly, we want a process. We want an incident investigation process. Do we need to? Is it a reportable incident? Is this something we need to transfer and pass on to the regulator? If it's something that we hadn't considered before, then we want to find out: are there well-known controls out there? Is there something where there's very little in safety that hasn't been considered before by another company? Our regulator, our WorkSafe, is a fantastic resource for, and using the codes of compliance, the codes of practice in Tasmania are really good ways to have a look about what controls we want to put in place. But the investigation and then the risk management process that rolls through there is similar, and we want to identify, assess, control, and then we want to review if those controls are working. Does that answer that specific question, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Someone has just reached out asking, can they get our email addresses to connect after the session? Rather than reading out an email address, I can encourage all of you to please add Mitch and or I on LinkedIn send us a message and let us know that you were listening into the conversation today, and happy to keep answering any questions directly for you. The other opportunity is jump on the Altius Group website, fill out a contact us form, pop in your details, and then we can reach out to you as well. Someone has asked Mitch for a listing of the lead indicators that you mentioned. Lag indicators are commonly known and quite understood in organisations, but those lead indicators are probably a bit more where people are needing a bit more advice and education. Perhaps I could encourage that individual and anyone else after such a reference as the lead indicators, as I mentioned, reach out through LinkedIn, reach out through our website, and we can get that information through to you today. There's a couple other questions, Mitch, mindful of time, so power on with the presentation.
Yeah, sorry, I want to just take a second to unpack that, just because I think it's important. I would encourage you, when it comes to lead indicators, not to feel like there's hard and fast rules. For some organisations, it really depends on your size. For a mum and dad at home operation, there's not going to be regular hazards coming through. So if one of our lead indicators is, are we having hazards get reported, then that might be something that doesn't work for our particular business. So I encourage you to have a think about your own organisation. Have a think about what would provide context and colour to where you're particularly at within your organisation. What should we have a look at? Should we be having and tracking how many risk assessments we're doing? Is that suitable for our side of business? Or should we be measuring how long it takes between a hazard and a corrective action taking place? So just to tie that up, I don't think there's a perfect list of lead indicators. Certainly I can provide you the ones that I've listed here today, but I would encourage you to have a think about some of your own as well, and what might be suitable for you guys there.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch.
So the tools, and I have touched on these throughout the presentation. I think it's good to re-emphasize around how we're building that culture and what controls we're using. The policies and procedures, let's make them specific. Let's tailor them to our organisation. Let's build them with the people who are going to utilise them, and let's review if they're being utilised within the people of our organisations. Our communication strategies, what works for our organisation? Are we dispersed? Does it make sense for us to have face-to-face meetings where we talk about safety? Does it make sense for if we're on the road a lot? Does it make sense for us to provide safety information via email where people can check on their own time? And with that, I would absolutely encourage you to discuss with the staff in your organisation, how do they want to be communicated with? What sort of strategy works for them? Some people, it's the same with check-ins for management. Some people want to have every day. Some people need once a month. So we really want to follow that through. Another one that I really want to emphasize is a safe reporting system. A safe reporting system is one that lets people report hazards, incidents, and near misses without fear of retribution. So if we have a reporting system where someone reports an incident and that flows through to them being held out as someone that's done something wrong and they're immediately signed up for training, what that does is discourage other people from reporting within your organisation. So we want a place that understands incidents happen, hazards exist. What we're trying to do is look to the future. We want to encourage people to, if they find a hazard, let's talk about it. Let's think about next time. Let's think about down the track. Let's think about the trainee that comes in. So a safe reporting system is crucial. The celebrating the success, different for every organisation. Be transparent, it builds ownership. But some people want to be held up and championed and brought out in front of their organization with a big trophy. Other people just want to see that the new starter comes on board and cannot worry about what they're brought up before. So there are different ways around how we can utilize these practical tools. The most important thing is that we're utilizing something specific to our organization. And reflecting on what good looks like, the most important thing is buy-in. We need buy-in from top to bottom, and leadership sets the standard with commitment and endorsement. The buy-in to increase the resilience within the organization really helps improve our ability in high pressure situations. We want to see safety as a capacity and not as an absence of errors, and to make safety more collaborative. These simple things outlined, we begin to take small steps. And like we said, we want an evolving system. We want a system that's alive and changes and develops. More discussion, more reporting, more emphasis on will get us to where we need to go. So what does good look like? A safety management system that collects, reviews, shares the information it collects, procedures and policies that have been developed by all, and are then accountable for leadership. The reporting culture, the hazards, the incidents, the near misses. Is it a punishment system? Is it an encouragement system? Can we trust people to do the right thing? Most people do the right thing in most situations is a sign of good culture. When no one's there, they've still got their PPE on. The system that evolves and improves, what didn't work last year? During our review process, what didn't work last year? When we've got empowered workers that can make calls about safety, that can identify hazards within their roles, we've got a system and for example, there's someone that can say that doesn't look safe, that looks too heavy. We're developing in the right areas and celebrating success. The consulting with workers, do they want awards? Do they want information? Finally, Matt, I just want to touch on a couple of case studies that briefly before just a minute or two for questions at the end here. So these are examples of companies that have done it right. DuPont, a large chemical company, progressed through the safety culture stages, the maturity. They were eventually used as a cultural benchmark and now consult around safety. They had leadership commitment, they had employee engagement, and they had continuous improvement. They prioritize those areas. Hitachi famously developed a cultural safety roadmap, 4 pillars with hundreds of criteria that made a big difference. The lowest level of injuries they experienced were off the back of their roadmap. Effective
Mitch,
communication. Yep.
So I'm just going to jump in because I'm very mindful of time.
Yep.
Before anyone leaves, here is a QR code. We have provided a self-check assessment. There's about 11 questions that you guys can respond to, and that might help give you a bit of grounding. Do thank you for your questions. As I mentioned, you can reach out to us through LinkedIn and the website. I do thank the individual who sent through the Safe Work Australia document that was in relation to the committee question. For the person that asked for the committee information, I recommend that you Google the Safe Work Australia Worker Representation Participation Guide, and you can get a formal response on that one as well. There was someone out there that also was giving a very honest appraisal of their own organisation and where they're at and under a risk assessment. Please, we are safety consultants. We're on your team. If you'd like support or advice, reach out to us. We can come through, help conduct safety culture assessment, psychosocial risk assessment, and gap analysis as well. Huge thank you to Stephanie and the team that have put this on, and a huge thank you to Mitch and our audience. Stephanie, was there anything else that you wanted to finish up on today?
No, just to again thank you both for your presentation today, which has been run as part of WorkSafe Month. So our presenters have been Matthew Counsel and Mitch Ferrie, both from Altius Group, and their presentation has been practical tools to create safety culture in the workplace. Today's webinar has been recorded, so please head to WorkSafe Tasmania's YouTube page to rewatch and share today's presentation, and also have a look at other webinars that we have been running throughout the month of October. Please also head to WorkSafe Tasmania's website to see what other webinars and in-person events we are running throughout the month of October. WorkSafe Tasmania Month is an initiative that is funded by the WorkCover Board Tasmania. Thank you to our presenters again, and thank you for everyone for attending. Please have a safe and healthy rest of the day.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.